Hello and welcome to the fourth episode of the Special Qualities podcast from the National Park. I'm Alec, the plastic-free Rhywyn officer, and I'm joined today by Alec Young and Hero Douglas to talk about the inspiration for the arts, which is one of the special qualities of the Eryri National Park. We're sat here today at Plas Tanabwlch in the beautiful gardens here on a glorious day, and I'm looking forward to having a conversation with both of my guests today about this particular special quality, inspiration for the arts, and how they've been influenced by the Eryri National Park. I think we'll just start off by giving a quick introduction to both. Hero, would you like to maybe talk a bit about who you are, where you live and what you do?
So my name's Hero Douglas, I'm 24, I live in Capacarrig, which is where I've lived most of my life. I'm a musician, a composer, I'm doing a PhD in composition, mostly for the harp, but also a bit of vocal music. I'm also a mountain leader and on the mountain rescue team.
Thank you so much. And Patrick?
I'm a director of opera, which means I get involved in the impossible task of trying to get singers to act on the stage. And I'm the founder and artistic director of the world's only Welsh language opera company called Opera Cymru.
So you're both in the field of music, and I'd be interested to hear about your backstory, maybe how you got into music, and perhaps your relationship with Eryri and how that might have influenced both of your passions for music and how you've pursued a career in that.
I grew up in Capacarrig, and I've always had a great love for music. I used to rewatch the songs in all Disney movies, much to my brother's annoyance. And I went to a Welsh school in Llanrwst called Ysgol Brogwydr, where music was sort of intrinsically part of our curriculum. We got offered the choice to play, I think it was the recorder, drums, violin or harp, as I probably would have been about 5 or 6 years old. And they were very cheap lessons, so they were offered to everybody, and I chose the drums originally, but they were full. I couldn't play the drums, so then I got the harp, which I'm obviously very grateful for now. And then I think I realised also quite quickly that I really enjoyed performing, and the Eisteddfods and all of that sort of, from a small scale to a much bigger scale, was an amazing opportunity to really get stuck in and to be able to perform. It was, and then obviously growing up somewhere so beautiful, but also quite rural and not boring in the sense that I love climbing and swimming and being in the mountains, so I was very enriched in that way. But it also meant that when the weather was bad, I was sat inside a lot, and there wasn't like cinemas or so many local shops other than outdoor shops, which I wasn't very interested in at that point. So a lot of reading and listening to music and writing and playing the harp.
Brilliant. And do you play the triple harp as well?
No.
Okay.
I play the little Celtic harp and then a big pedal harp.
Lovely. Great. And what's your backstory, so to speak?
Well, I suppose I'm a musician manqué. I'm just terrible at it, but love it. And I suppose I a little bit like you here, I just appreciate, I think music needs a context where you can listen, and I like to listen, and it's very hard if you're particularly I think in a city environment to listen fully to music. So having effectively having noise cancelling headphones without the headphones, but cancelling the noise, is a great way to appreciate music. So that's been a real help to me, and I have a view from my house which I get perhaps a third of the year, which is of the top of Rhywyn, and I get a very strong sense of aiming high from that, and I think that has certainly helped my artistic ambition for the company.
So it's interesting there you've just tied in another one of the National Park's special qualities into your inspiration, which is tranquility, which is a very important part of the National Park and one of the primary special qualities of the area. Is there any particular place you'd say hero? I mean, Patrick just spoke about Rhywyn being in sight a third of the year, which I think is a bit optimistic. But
Hey, well,
is there any particular place, and that could be either a location, a community, somewhere that might have inspired you more than anywhere else in the national park that you could talk about?
Yeah, well, I live about a 5-minute walk from mae'r, and I've always really enjoyed swimming. When I was younger, I had a great deal of hip surgery, and so swimming was something that I could do relatively easily, and I was as good as the other kids, whereas I couldn't walk or run as well as the other children. And I got really fixated on the sounds of the water and the sounds of being underwater, and I would record the sounds of the water a lot. And then try and create those textures in my music. Like, one of my favourite harp pieces is a piece called La Source, and it depicts a waterfall, and it was the first piece I watched my harp teacher play, and it made me obsessed with trying to learn that piece, which is why I think I practiced so much. But that idea of sort of creating the textures and the things that we see in the natural world and then putting them into music. Similarly, I would, it was all my background and back garden growing up. So, and I'd do a lot of physical activity, and the way that my heartbeat would change, I really liked to try and take that and use that as a rhythm within a piece of music. So yeah, growing up and having that be where I played was definitely very inspirational to my music.
Amazing. And how would you say that you evoke a sense of place in your work? You are involved in writing operas along with local musicians, composers. How do you evoke that sense of place in your operas?
That's a tough one, and I suppose I defer to the composer. We do commission new work, and some of that's very exciting. We've got a film on the stocks, a filmed opera on the stocks with Gareth Glynn at the moment, but we work with other composers, and I kind of hand it over to the composers to make something of the music for that. But of course, with the story, one of the things that we're very keen to do is to create stage stories through music which speak to place, which speak particularly to Wales, and I think also at a remove to the spirit of Wales, which I think is very well preserved in the national park, and perhaps is a better advertisement for Wales than, I don't know, your average caravan park or whatever in other parts. Yeah. So there's other thing. What does it say, which I've noticed, as probably because I'm getting old, about where I am and how I respond to where I am. There's a sense, particularly in the summer, where you get to 5 o'clock in the afternoon and everything stops. It's as though time stands still. And that's like a window on another world. And I think music is a way of getting time to stand still. So I feel very comfortable. It's not only that I don't have to listen to too many motorbikes or traffic going past the front door, which I don't have. It's also this sense that time is standing still, and it allows a more creative dimension in one's life, which is something I really appreciate.
And do you feel something quite similar in Capel-Kiddig, where you're based as well?
Yeah, I mean, I did originally move away, but now I live in a stable in my mum's garden.
Right.
And that's where I work, and it's got these huge windows that look out onto the Cherddoriaeth. And yeah, it's a wonderful place to work and be, and you can see the weather rolling in from the hills.
Absolutely.
It definitely helps one feel quite creative.
I think there's another thing, which is, we all know that the Welsh language is as they say, one of Europe's oldest living languages. And it's accrued a lot of influences from the Romans, I think from the Greeks as well, and unfortunately perhaps from the Saxons. But the language has roots somehow in the geography, in the topography. And something that I feel as a learner that I'll never get my head around, which I really want to, is how so much of the language uses the natural environment to express human feelings or human thoughts. And these expressions, I think, are dying out, sadly, but I think they have a very strong connection with the place, with the seasons, with the weather.
Yeah.
And that's a very important part of what we do, because obviously we create new opera in Welsh.
Yeah. Can I put you on the spot and ask you for any examples that might spring to mind on the vibrancy of the Welsh language and its connection to the landscape?
You can. I can't answer. It's not a particular expression, but there's a nice expression for the summer solstice, which is trafod, which is the turn of the wheel, and there's something very satisfying and Celtic about that.
Yeah.
But there are many more expressions which are familiar expressions, which I think convey the culture's deep roots within the landscape.
Okay, great. And I'd just like to speak very briefly and crowbar my own kind of project into this podcast. Hero, you reached out to me, I think it was about 6 weeks ago, maybe a bit longer, and contacted me with the idea of composing an original piece for the plastic-free Rhwng initiative. I'd just like to hear very briefly maybe about why it is that you got in touch with me, what your inspiration was drawn from. I think it's important probably to mention that there's a very positive inspiration there as well, but there's obviously an adverse effect there's been an adverse kind of effect on that environment that has obviously inspired that as well, which is less positive. But could you just talk to me very briefly about why it is that that you got in touch?
Well, I got in touch because I saw it online, obviously that the campaign was happening, and I spend a lot of time on Rhwng. I work as a mountain leader, and it's probably where I'll be on a Friday, Saturday and Sunday, walking up and down the Llanberis path. And I have always grown up with an immense amount of respect and love for this natural world, and it's been really heavily ingrained in me that you're only as healthy as the world around you, and the importance of keeping it clean and well looked after. And it's not that I begrudge people that don't necessarily have, I do somewhat, that don't have that sort of respect, but I think coming from cities and coming from somewhere you are maybe less connected to the land around you, there is less of an understanding about the importance of not littering and not damaging the natural world. And it was a shock, to be honest, that how much litter I would see up there, how people could stand in front of this glorious, beautiful mountain and toss a plastic bottle out of their bag. And I think it's to do with a whole wide variety of things, a lack of facilities. People don't necessarily understand that there won't be rubbish bins every 100 metres or toilets, or that the cafe's been shut since 2019. People have this idea that it will be more, I guess, accessible. But I just found it really disheartening. It's this, obviously, as I've talked about, this area has really shaped my life and shaped the person I am, and I've felt immense sadness being separated from it, which is hence why I still live in Capel-Curragh 24 years later. But I wanted to create something, and I know myself how powerful music can be as a tool for change and as a tool for making people change the way they think, and really want to do something. And I thought maybe if I could write a catchy piece of music that I felt sort of got those feelings out, that maybe it would resonate with some people.
Absolutely.
So have you written it?
Yeah.
Oh, great.
I've written a song sort of personifying Rhwng. I don't know if that's my place to do that, but I have done it. And it sort of contains like a lot of Rhwng's history, the mythology, and it's a plea to stop people littering.
And it's a really evocative piece. I don't want to give too much of it away. It's bilingual, and it's really haunting. It's really, really beautiful, and I really appreciate your support, and looking forward to releasing it alongside some very interesting and relevant content to go with it as well. It's interesting, you were talking there about how the environment has shaped you, and I think through writing this song that you have an opportunity to an extent shape the environment in return.
Yeah, it's felt like the first thing that maybe I I mean, I've been a vegan for most of my life, so activism in music has been something that's always been really interesting to me. And I've written an activism musical, and I've written children's songs that sort of, because I remember all of the lullabies and things I was taught as nursery rhymes I was taught at school, and I just thought, imagine if they had a really powerful message, because they really do stay with us. And it felt like another opportunity to do something. I want to do something powerful with music, because it is such a powerful tool for change, I think.
Absolutely. And I appreciate you probably trying to shape perhaps not the natural environment, but the communities that you're performing in and working in. Could you speak to us a bit about how you're developing the tradition of music in Eryri?
Yes, well, I think everyone's concerned about the follow-on, the corollary of what you're describing here in people who almost treat the national park or Rhwng as a kind of joyride in some way, because they come from a completely different environment. And what I think is really important is that communities are sustained in these environments, because it's the communities that can offer the greatest protection. And so part of our ambition is to try and create jobs which are lasting jobs. If anyone mentions the word opera, there are various reactions, from pass the sick bag to oh, that's very elitist, I don't want to deal with that. And I'm a revolutionary myself, in the sense that I want to change that. I would really like what we do to be felt that it is a part of North Wales, it's a part of Blaenau Ffestiniog, which is the area in which we're based, and that it has a vital contribution both economically and in terms of the community in preserving what is, I think, in great danger of being lost, because we're just going to become a kind of a lay-by on the way to Rhwng or on the way to some other joyride. And I think we need to try and stop that. So I suppose there's an economical and there's a political objective as well in what we're trying to do. But preserving communities and part of the fact that we perform in Welsh, which, as it turns out, which I didn't expect, we translate operas, but we also create new operas. But Welsh as a language is absolutely perfect for singing. It suits it so well. The voices, actually, from just this, very small part of the world, it is a miracle that there are so many really interesting, talented.
And can I just interrupt you? Why do you think it is that this is such a hotbed for talent?
I think there are a couple of things. There's a nice story that a quite well-known Welsh tenor called Aled. I've forgotten his name now. That's terrible. Tells of his first experience of going to the Royal College of Music in London, and he felt such an idiot because all his colleagues were talking about the meaning of Shakespeare, or it was all sounded very educated, whatever. But when it came to standing on the stage and performing, they turned to jelly, and they were very nervous, and they couldn't stand, they didn't know what to do. He said, I was brought up in the chapel tradition and the Eisteddfod tradition. Getting up on the stage was just second nature to me, so I had no issue with that. And I think, so that's the Eisteddfod. I think that tradition is very helpful in making performers comfortable with what they're doing. The language also helps that. If you're singing in your own language, it is a natural thing to do. So as somebody who wants to direct people in how they act, it's really important that what they do looks natural, I think. And so that's another very important ingredient. So they do say it's the water as well. I can't answer to that one. But there are various factors that help. It's
another one of our unofficial special qualities, probably.
Yeah.
I think we're going to have to wrap up this conversation because we've almost run over time. But I'd just like to thank you both so much for a really enlightening conversation about this special quality, inspiration for the arts from the Eryri National Park. I hope to speak to you both again soon, and here I look forward to working further with you on this very exciting project. Thank you so much.
Thank you.